Around 128 million years ago, give or take, snakes popped up out of nowhere and started thriving on Earth, eventually branching out into around 4,000 species we have today. But it's not just because they ditched their limbs and got all long and slithery. Even though there are 25 groups of limbless lizards, snakes are the one who really hit the jackpot in terms of diversity. To figure out what makes snakes so successful, scientists looked at over 60,000 snake and lizard specimens from museums all over the world. According to them, snakes have been evolving faster than lizards in key ways, which gives them the upper hand when it comes to exploring new opportunities. So if you think this is creepy, hey, I'm right there with you. But let's push forward. One major factor of their success is their feeding habits. With their flexible skulls and keen sense of smell, snakes can eat animals way bigger than their heads and track down prey like champs. When dinosaurs got wiped out around 66 million years ago, snakes were ready to adapt to the changing world and fill those empty spots. Now, we're not sure why snakes evolved so quickly, but it's clear that there's something special in the grand scheme of evolution. Just like the sudden explosion of flowering plants, these macroevolutionary singularities have shaped life on our planet in unexpected ways. Now, snakes can be found almost everywhere on Earth, showing off a wide range of traits and habitats. They can be found in deserts, rainforests, grasslands, and even deep oceans. All snakes are predators, munching on different prey, including insects, small vertebrates, other snakes, and sometimes even larger mammals or humans. Ow! However, you won't see any snakes in Ireland. Why? Well, one of the most famous legends about St. Patrick involves him driving these reptiles out of Ireland. Still, experts think snakes never lived in Ireland to begin with, so it's more of a symbolic story than anything else. There are a few more places in the world where snakes don't exist, like Iceland, Greenland, New Zealand, and Antarctica. New Zealand's lack of snakes is especially intriguing, considering its proximity to snake-heavy Australia. The reason for this seems to be the country's ever-changing climate, which makes it difficult for snakes to thrive. Now, even though New Zealand is snake-free, sea snakes occasionally make an appearance in its waters. The yellow-bellied sea snake and the yellow-lipped sea krait are known to visit the island every now and then. So when it comes to what country has the most snakes, Brazil takes the prize. With over 375 species calling it home, Brazil has a mix of harmless and dangerous snakes. The country's vast rainforests provide a perfect habitat for these reptiles, including famous constrictors like the anaconda, the boa constrictor, and the emerald tree boa. Brazil is also home to venomous snakes, such as the fer-de-lance and coral snakes. However, if you fear going to a Rio carnival just because you're terrified of Brazilian snakes, I've got some news for you. Out of 4,000 snake species in the world, only around 600 are venomous, and only about 200 of them can cause harm to humans. So, fatal snake bites are less common than people might think. Chances you stumble upon a bad snake are like 5%. Now, it's hard to say exactly how many individual snakes there are out there, as they tend to, keep to themselves. However, scientists can make estimates about the number of specific species. For example, they believe that there could be as many as 1 million common garter snakes in the wild. Cute little guys. Unlike the super widespread common garter, the St. Lucia racer is one of the rarest snakes in the world. It had quite a roller coaster of a story. Thought to be extinct, then found again, then lost, and finally rediscovered in 2012. The survivors are spending time together on a teeny island called Maria Major, after being wiped out on the mainland by mongooses and other invasive critters that like to snack on these harmless snakes. Another reason snakes hit an evolutionary jackpot is because they have this cool thing that they're basically solar-powered and depend on outside sources of heat or light. People often say they're cold-blooded, but that's not entirely accurate. Their blood isn't cold. The right word for them is ectothermic, which means their body temperature can change and is controlled by the environment. While mammals and birds can keep their temperature steady, reptiles must soak up the sun or find other ways to warm themselves up. Now, some snakes do not lay eggs, defying the traditional classification of reptiles as egg layers. While it may have been taught at school that all reptiles lay eggs, nature has its exceptions. About 70% of snakes lay eggs, but those living in colder environments give birth to live young because eggs would not survive in such conditions. Nature always has a way of challenging our expectations and classifications. Snakes are a successful group of tetrapods, even though they don't have the 4 key-footed feature that tetrapods are named after. Despite this, or maybe because of it, snakes are super diverse. It might seem like this diversity dates way back to the times of dinosaurs, over 100 million years ago. But modern snakes seem to have emerged more recently. Fossils and DNA suggest that snakes started to spread out and evolve after the mass extinction event that wiped out dinosaurs. They took advantage of the empty habitats and niches left behind by the long-gone species. In terms of movement, snakes are super flexible and can crawl, burrow, climb, swim, and some can even fly. The ancient ancestors of snakes were quite different from what we see today, with some species even having well-developed limbs. Snakes continued to evolve through the late Cretaceous period, with various species appearing around the world. Only a handful of modern snake families emerged later, millions of years after the extinction of dinosaurs. The snake fossil record is patchy, making it hard to piece together their evolutionary history. To make sense of it all, scientists turned to DNA analysis. Molecular clock techniques help estimate when various snake lineages split off from each other, suggesting that most of the modern snake diversity is younger than dinosaurs. Only a few snake lineages survived the mass extinction event at the end of the Cretaceous. But these few survivors managed to give rise to the incredible diversity of snakes today. Some snake families persisted for millions of years until they eventually went extinct, while others thrived and diversified in the aftermath of the mass extinction event. This pattern of survival and rapid diversification resembles what we see in the bird and mammal fossil records after the extinction of dinosaurs. The ability to burrow, hunt in the dark, and go long periods without food helped some snakes survive the chaos after the mass extinction. Their flexibility and adaptability allowed them to find shelter and thrive when other species couldn't. Snakes can be some of the scariest animals around. Most snake species are harmless and don't bother humans. Even if they wanted to, most snakes are too small to pose a real threat to people. But there are some big snakes out there that can eat surprising things. The largest animal ever eaten by a snake was a 150-pound hyena devoured by an African rock python. I'll bet that hyena wasn't laughing then, huh? Before that, the biggest meal on record was a 130-pound impala eaten by a rock python. That's impressive. The biggest snakes in the world are constrictors. They tend to suffocate their prey. To eat large prey, the snake itself has to be huge. African rock pythons, green anacondas, reticulated pythons, Burmese pythons, Indian pythons, and amethystine pythons are all contenders for the title of the largest snake in the world. They can grow to incredible lengths and weights. And that's it. I'm done with snakes now. Ew. Now, if Earth's history were a movie, we humans would only take up the last second of the end credits. Our planet has been around for about 4.6 billion years, but our human story began about 300,000 years ago, in Africa. Now our ancestors had some wild adventures in nature. They could have run into creatures so big they'd make today's elephants look like puppies. The woolly mammoth is a pretty famous animal, sure. His cousin, though, the Columbian mammoth, not so much. This giant used to roam places from Canada all the way down to Mexico. Unlike the furrier woolly mammoths, which hung out in colder places, these animals had shorter hair, resembling huge elephants. They also had incredibly large tusks, like 12 feet worth of spiraling, sturdy tusks. And they weren't just for show, they came in handy when facing predators. That includes our ancestors. If you think about sloths these days, you're picturing these adorably slow creatures. They couldn't possibly be in your list of most dangerous animals. Well, their grandparents might have. For starters, we call them ground sloths, and they vary a lot in size. Some were as big as rhinos, and others, like the Megatherium, were as colossal as elephants. Imagine seeing a 20-foot-long sloth which doesn't mind chewing on some meat every now and then, at least in theory. Ever heard of Bigfoot? Well, our next animal kind of looks like him, but is a distant cousin to orangutans. Meet Gigantopithecus, the largest primate to ever call our planet its home. Standing tall at 10 feet and weighing more than 600 pounds, these animals were amazing to look at in real life. Unlike Bigfoot, they weren't constantly hiding. In fact, it's believed they were peaceful and gentle creatures. Sadly, they faded away about 100,000 years ago, mainly because their food sources slowly became unavailable. Those lush, fruity forests they called home eventually turned into dry grasslands. Next on our list is the cave hyena. Weighing a chunky 250 pounds and standing 3 feet tall, these beasts were as long as a grown-up lying down. What's even more interesting about these creatures is that they loved hanging out in groups. A pack could be as big as 30 of these animals, which meant they could easily take on even the biggest, heaviest mastodons. Our ancient families would have needed to stay alert around these hungry specimens. Sadly for these hyenas, about 20,000 years ago, their numbers started going down. Soon enough, they completely disappeared from the planet. Quick pop quiz. What's called a tiger but isn't really one? It's the saber-toothed tiger. I mean, sure, they belong to the feline family, but they aren't technically tigers. First appearing around 42 million years ago, in July, I think. Many of their kind were gone before we even showed up. However, early Americans might have bumped into a couple of specimens from this group. If that really happened, it would have been quite the encounter. Think of the biggest wild lion today or the hefty Siberian tiger. These big cats also had some incredible features hidden in their fur. They were good at sneaking around, hiding, and pouncing on mammoths bigger than themselves. Their bite wasn't that strong, but they could open their jaws wide, like twice as much as a lion. And although their teeth were a bit on the weak side, they had buff forearms to pin down their dinner, giving those big fangs a purpose. Not the kind of kitty you'd want to play with. Dire wolves made their debut about 250,000 years ago. They were like the gray wolves we know today, but a lot stronger. While wolves these days stretch out to about 6 feet and tip the scales at 170 pounds max, dire wolves were about 5 feet and about 150 pounds. Found all over North and South America, they had admirable jaws, biting nearly a third harder than their modern counterparts. Also, their favorite snack was horses. But just like many other majestic beasts of the past, they faded away around 10,000 years ago. Now, names can be deceiving. Take the American lion, for example. It's not really a lion, it's more of a panther's big cousin. The other part of the name is correct, though. They did live in America about 330,000 years ago. This feline was no lap cat either. They were at the top of the wildcat pyramid, weighing a colossal 772 pounds. That's like stacking 4 grown men on a scale. Even the mighty African lion would look a tad bit shy beside these beasts. With the muscle to take down a bison, you wouldn't want to accidentally interrupt their dinner. They parted ways with this planet around 11,000 years ago, right after the last ice age. Now, down in Australia, about 50,000 years ago, I wasn't around then, there lurked a relative of the Komodo dragon, the Megalania. Experts love to have debates on how big it was. Some say it stretched out to 23 feet. Others think it was just about 11 feet long. Either way, they were basically mega-sized Komodo dragons with a dangerous bite. If you think bears are already big and fluffy now, let's introduce the short-faced bear. While this big creature stood on its hind legs, it towered at 14 feet. With long limbs, they could outrun today's bears, hitting speeds up to 40 miles per hour. These ultra bears sadly disappeared around 11,600 years ago. Now imagine a crocodile. Okay, imagine that same crocodile, only supersized, with sporty legs, doing its thing in Australia about 1.6 million years ago. Well, say hello to the quincana. These crocs were extremely large, reaching 23 feet. And no, they weren't lazy river loungers. These creatures really love spending time on land. They evolved to have strong legs for their chases and razor-sharp teeth designed for slicing, not gripping. When did we stop sharing beaches with them? About 40,000 years ago. The name elephant bird might not sound familiar, but try to picture a bird that stood tall as high as a basketball hoop at 10 feet and weighed as much as a small car, 1,500 pounds. Their eggs were equally huge, like 150 chicken eggs bundled up into one. Now, as amazing as these birds sound, there's a lot we still don't know about them. They're hard to study, as most extinct animals are. Still, some recent studies have given us some clues. Scientists have been examining ancient molecules from their fossilized eggshells. It's an awesome piece of evidence, since these birdie shells were thick, preserving precious DNA inside. Plus, there are tons of these eggshell fragments sprinkled all over Madagascar's beaches. Because of these findings, we now know these birds were herbivores and loved eating leaves and seeds. We also know the tiny kiwi bird is its closest living relative. Now, dodos were these amazing birds we also used to share the planet with. They're like distant cousins to Asian pigeons. To give you some perspective, imagine a chunky bird weighing about 50 pounds. Similar to chickens, turkeys, and ostriches, dodos were also the types of birds that couldn't fly. Their wings were small, and they had the muscle strength of, well, a wet noodle. Now, you might have heard the word dodo used as a name for creatures that aren't that bright. Don't get confused, though, by this name. These birds were in fact intelligent. Scientists were able to figure that out by studying their fossils. It turns out that they were good at smelling stuff, unlike most birds that are all about the visuals. These creatures aren't around for us to study anymore, but that might change. One evolutionary biologist is on a mission to fully understand these amazing ancient birds. On that note, she revealed that the dodo's DNA has been completely sequenced. There are even talks about potentially bringing dodos back to life. They would make a nice addition to the lovely beaches of Mauritius, the place they used to call home many, many years ago.
You're strapped in a boat cruising down the Amazon River with the sun scorching hot. As you check out your map, your boat starts rocking back and forth. The water is starting to get more intense, so you hang on for dear life. You tuck your map in your pocket and try to take control of your boat. You strike some jagged rocks and duck low to avoid tree branches. Your boat strikes a large rock out of nowhere and capsizes. You're swimming in the murky green water. While you're trying your best to get ashore, your boat gets washed away. Underneath the water lies a whole new world of bizarre and dangerous animals. Candiru fish are snake-like creatures that can grow up to 16 inches long. Arapimus can weigh more than an adult male and are taller than most basketball players. They're the biggest freshwater fish in South America. They have a hybrid gill system that forces them to pop up to the surface every 5 to 15 minutes to breathe in oxygen for their large swim bladder. You swim out of the raging water and dry yourself off. Oh no, your map is completely soaked. There's no way you can get to your destination without it. You venture into the thick rainforest, shoving the branches and leaves away. As you get deeper, you notice something on a tree. It's barely moving, but it's got sharp claws and a raggedy coat. It stretches its arm to another branch and tries to pull itself up, ever so slowly. Sloths sleep more than half their days and only head down from trees once a week. They're so motionless, they sometimes grow algae and moss on their fur. The rainforest gets denser with each step until there's barely any sunlight illuminating the path in front of you. You notice a figure following you. With every branch you step on, you can hear a faint sound right next to you creeping around. You start walking a bit faster, and the sound catches up with you. You make it out of the dense part and tread along a narrow path until you reach a cliff. You can't walk normally here, so you pin against the wall and walk sideways to cross the hills. You slowly move across with the river 30 feet below you. You move your right foot and some rocks fall into the river. You keep going and misstep. You're about to fall, but you hold on to a large tree branch and pull yourself up. You notice a couple of colorful poison frogs inches away from your fingers. Touching any of these frogs can be extremely dangerous and harmful, despite their amazing color patterns. The golden poison frog is one of the most poisonous animals in the world. One of them hops right next to you, so you let go of the branch and fall back in the river. The river is washing you down until you reach a calm current. Underneath you is a swarm of piranhas swimming with their sharp teeth. The red color on their skin is unmistakable, so you swim off like an Olympic athlete. Piranhas will eat anything that gets in their way, no matter the size. You grip onto a log and climb up a small rock to catch your breath. There's a huge electric eel underneath the rock. Despite their name, they're more related to catfish than eels. They use their powerful 600 volts of electricity to defend themselves and catch food. You're stuck, unless you're like the common basilisk that can run on the water like a jet ski. These incredible lizards have special webbing on their toes and can run the distance of a basketball court. You hop on a bunch of rocks until you reach the land. You continue walking along the riverbank until you come across a moving rock. You rub your eyes and see it moving again. It's a dinosaur-looking turtle that resembles a crocodile with armor. The mata mata is a freshwater turtle that disguises itself with its surroundings to catch prey. Their heads stretch longer than their bodies. You shimmy your way past it and continue. You head back into the rainforest and find a spot to rest. Wait, there are giant ants everywhere. They're the biggest ants in the world and can produce one of the most painful stings out there, even comparable to a wasp's sting. You immediately get up and find another place to rest. As you continue walking along, you notice the same feeling of something following you. You can hear some leaves rustling, but it's getting dark and there's no way of telling. You find a nice little spot to build a campfire and catch some Z's. But in the Amazon, everything is a threat. Except for those cute capybaras wandering around. They live in groups next to water sources. They're also the biggest rodents in the world. You don't need to worry about them if you're stuck in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. Suddenly, you feel something slithering up next to you. You look down and see a massive green anaconda just about to constrict you. They are the heaviest snakes in the world and can grow up to 20 feet long and have a huge appetite. You get up and sprint your way out of there. All right, you found a decent cave to crash in. It's daytime again, and you're still alive. You continue walking along the rainforest. You were able to find some breakfast to boost your energy for the rest of the day. You spot something on a tree that looks like a branch, but it's actually a potu, a master of disguise that can spend days motionless on broken tree branches. These bizarre birds use those branches as their permanent home, where they lay their eggs and chill all day. You continue your way through the rainforest and see a Brazilian wandering spider crawling on a tree branch right in front of you. 8 of these species can be found in the Amazon area. They are some of the most aggressive and venomous spiders out there. So, you make a big detour and walk away from it. You feel someone walking next to you again, but you still can't figure out what it is. You see a steep cliff with a waterfall hitting a large lake ahead of you. Looks peaceful, until you see a team of black caimans gathering around the shore. They're the biggest predators in the whole Amazon ecosystem and feed on anything that moves. It's a good thing you're on high ground, otherwise, whoa! You slip and fall down the river, right on the deep end. So far, no caimans spotted you. You swim underwater and try to get to the opposite end of where the reptiles are. As you climb out and dry yourself off, you notice some large black spots on you. You try pulling them off, but they've latched on pretty hard. The Amazon giant leech finds its target by tracking movement and shadow. Once they attach themselves to the skin, it's extremely difficult to extract them. The best way to do so is to slide your finger next to its mouth and pull it off slowly. Ugh. You manage to get them off your body and see that the caimans are swimming towards you. You're pinned to the wall, with the lake of hungry reptiles approaching. Suddenly, a pink dolphin jumps out of the water and splashes all over them. They can grow larger than humans and are the celebrities of the Amazon. Scientists think they get their color from the blood capillaries on their skin. The Amazon even has bull sharks swimming around. These carnivorous giant fish are threatening to humans and can swim in both saltwater and freshwater. These sharks prey on anything within their reach, including other sharks. The dolphin distracted the caimans, so you climb up the cliff and try to find the best way to escape. Opened jaws waiting for you to fall into the pit are right below you. You're lucky enough to escape to the top, but as your arms pull you up, the first thing that you see is a jaguar looking straight at you. It's the creature that's been following you this whole time. You get up while it starts circling you, timing its strike. You know that you can't take on a jaguar, nor can you outrun it, so you grab a large tree branch from the ground to defend yourself. It jumps at you, but you duck down in time. The jaguar lands in the water far away from the caiman crocs. It's a good thing these large kitties are excellent swimmers. You pick yourself up and continue. And to your surprise, you find your boat again. You fix it up and sail your way out of the Amazon. Whew!
So, does the mysterious Devil's Gardens in the Amazon rainforest ring any bells? Don't worry. It's not some spooky phenomenon. It's the work of some tiny but mighty insects called the lemon ants. These ants inject a natural herbicide, formic acid, into any other plant that is not the tree species that they call home. By doing this, they create a space for their treehouse saplings to grow, allowing the ant colony to expand as it occupies new nesting sites in the saplings. That's some efficient gardening, if you ask me. But don't be fooled. These devil gardens are not just a bunch of boring old trees. In fact, they are botanical anomalies that grow very slowly every year, and some of them are over 800 years old. Who knew ants could create such impressive and long-lasting structures? Of course, the rainforest is still one of the most diverse ecosystems on Earth, with a remarkable diversity of plant life. But it's fascinating to see the control ants can have over their environment, creating single-species structures in such a complex ecosystem. But where does the name Devil's Garden come from? We know ants are to blame, but is there something else hiding in the Amazon rainforest? Well, picture this. You're strolling along, taking in the lush foliage, when suddenly you stumble upon a clearing. But wait, there's something strange about this patch of land. There's no vegetation, just a handful of trees standing alone in the dirt. What's going on here? It's easy to understand why people came up with this name after seeing the weird stretch of vegetation. And as humans do, they came up with quite an impressive legend to back up the story. It was said that the inhabitant of this eerie oasis was a shape-shifting evil spirit, like me. Just kidding. This little guy may have looked like a misshapen person walking on one hoof and one human foot. But don't be fooled. He supposedly had a whole bag of tricks up his sleeve, including the ability to transform into someone you know and lead you down the path to doom. Hey, it's just a myth, but you have to admit it was quite convincing, right? Clever landscaping ants aside, there are a lot of unsolved mysteries hidden in the Amazon rainforest, like its unusual geoglyphs, for example. Humans have been getting creative with the Earth's surface for ages. Geoglyphs are just one of the many ways we've left our mark on this planet. Basically, we take some sand or stones, move them around a bit, and voila! We've got ourselves a funky design that pops against the backdrop of the ground. A new study found that the area was home to up to 1 million people before Columbus first arrived in the New World back in 1492. That's a lot of people, and they left behind some pretty cool stuff. The Amazon rainforest is already amazing, with 1 in 10 known species in the world living there, and 1 in 5 of Earth's birds. But did you know that over the past few decades, archaeologists have discovered evidence of numerous large, complex societies that may have inhabited Amazonia? It turns out that the Amazon rainforest was not just a pristine wilderness, but a hub of human activity as well. These South American geoglyphs are particularly interesting. They're these huge structures that combine square, circular, and hexagonal shapes. Archaeologists have found very few remains of habitation inside the enclosures, which suggests they were not settlements. Instead, the most likely explanation is that they were used for ceremonial gatherings. The exact function of these structures is still a mystery, though. To find out how widespread human settlements were in the Amazon, scientists focus on the basin of the upper reaches of the Tapias River, a major tributary of the Amazon. Using satellite images, they discovered 81 new archaeological sites in the upper Tapias Basin, with a total of 104 earthworks. That means there is no gap in the network of earthworks spanning across Amazonia's southern rim. When researchers conducted ground surveys of 24 of these sites, they found evidence that the sites they visited were once inhabited. These sites dated from 1250 to 1500 CE and ranged from about 100 to 1300 feet wide. The largest were typically hexagonal fortified settlements, suggesting a certain degree of planning and uniformity in their construction. Based on the size and distributions of the earthworks, the researchers suggested that similar settlements may have extended over about 154,000 square miles of the southern rim of the Amazon, supporting a population of between 500,000 and 1 million people in late pre-Columbian times. Of course, the new study doesn't mean the Amazon rainforest was ever a teeming megalopolis. It's still mostly uncharted, so we have no idea how pre-Columbian populations were distributed across Amazonia. But it's exciting to learn about these ancient societies and the cool things they left behind. The scientists plan to do more excavations in the upper Tapias Basin to refine their understanding of the cultural developments there. Who knows what they'll find next? Maybe a lost city full of treasure and adventure. Also hidden in the vast habitat of the Amazon is this next quirky creature. Ever heard of the Amazon pink river dolphins? Unfortunately, there is still so much we don't know about them. First things first, though, let's talk about what they look like. So picture this, a small, light-colored dolphin with a pink nose and lips. They're the Barbie of dolphins. Aside from that, they look like regular dolphins with plump bodies, bulbous foreheads, skinny snouts, chubby cheeks, and small eyes. They can be found in countries like Bolivia, Brazil, Colombia, and Peru. They're also the only species of river dolphin found in the Amazon River. Unfortunately, these little guys are officially critically endangered species, so there are not many specimens available that scientists can study. No other name is more famous when it comes to exploring the Amazon rainforest than that of Percy Fawcett. He dedicated his life to exploring the area in search of a lost city, and not just any city, but an ancient, mysterious city that he called Z. Sounds like something straight out of an Indiana Jones movie, right? Percy was born in England in 1867 and had quite a career before he started exploring. But he didn't let his profession hold him back from following his dreams of exploring South America. In fact, he made 7 expeditions to the Amazon between 1906 and 1924, each time getting closer to uncovering the secrets of Z. Now, let me tell you a little bit about how large the Amazon rainforest is. How big is it? I asked myself. It's so big that you could fit the whole of the UK and Ireland into it a whopping 17 times. That's a lot of trees and animals to navigate through. But Percy was up for the challenge. Despite his best efforts, Percy never found the lost city of Z, and sadly, he disappeared during his final expedition in 1925. But his legacy lived on through the years, inspiring many to become archaeologists and explorers themselves. In fact, a book called The Lost City of Z was written about Percy's adventures and was even made into a movie. It's not all hidden mysteries and wild nature out there. There are around 1 million indigenous folks living their best lives in the Amazon rainforest. That's right, they hunt, fish, farm, and even have access to Western medicine and education. But here's the kicker. Not all of these folks are keen on socializing with outsiders, and can you blame them? For years, loggers, miners, and ranchers have been, shall we say, behaving badly toward these communities. It's no wonder that some tribes have chosen to stay isolated and protect themselves from the dangers of the outside world. In fact, in 2018, Brazilian authorities were able to snap a photo of a man dubbed the indigenous man in the hole. He's the last remaining member of his tribe. But don't feel too bad for him. He's doing just fine on his own and has made it pretty clear that he's not interested in outside visitors. The authorities still leave him some seeds and tools though, so it's not all bad news. So Megalodon was one of the biggest and most ferocious monsters on our planet. Powerful jaws, razor-sharp teeth, gigantic size. But what do you know about how it sounded? Imagine how loudly it growled, permeating the underwater world with sound vibrations. This sound resembled nothing. Megalodon didn't have a voice. It was a shark, and sharks don't have sound-producing organs. It was a quiet danger. But despite its muteness, yes, that is a word, you could have still heard it. Come with me. Now you're underwater, clenching your fist, raising your hand, and quickly bringing it down. Now imagine that you have a big submarine instead of a fist and hear the water flowing around the smooth surface of the hull. That's what a megalodon sounded like. When this monster was swimming out to the surface and opening its jaws, it sounded like a waterfall. The giant shark swam at high speed. When the water was passing through its mouth and gills, it sounded like a flowing river, a fast, powerful river. Megalodon had no voice, only the scary sound of flowing water. Other ancient fish could make sounds, but you would hardly hear them. Whales, dolphins, and their distant ancestors are not counted because they're mammals. Fish communicated at frequencies elusive to human ears. They still have this ability, but in most, the ocean was and is a pretty quiet place. So let's get out on ancient lands and check what was going on with the sounds there. Thanks to modern technologies, scientists can analyze the sounds of many ancient animals. Using CT scans, they found that some dinosaurs had complex systems of small open pockets in their skulls. They used these winding cranial mazes to reproduce a wide range of sounds and regulate body temperature, and people have managed to hear them. An ancient bird that lived 79 to 140 million years ago, Pegasus, sounded similar to some farm birds like duck and geese. But the ancient creature probably screamed in a scarier way. Scientists found this out thanks to the Syrinx fossil they discovered in 2016 in Antarctica. It's the oldest known vocal organ in the world. It helped Pegasus make a double humming sound coming from the left and right sides of the Syrinx. Imagine a duck and goose screaming. Increase the volume several times. Perhaps that's what its distant ancestors sound like. As for other flying reptiles like the pterodactyl, it couldn't scream like Pegasus because it didn't have a syrinx. These winged monsters could growl, hiss, and snap their beaks, and this was their most effective sound. Remember any tall basketball player. The skull of the pterodactyl was slightly longer than their height. Just imagine what a noise the dinosaur created when it was snapping its powerful beak. The clicking sound could deafen and frighten other ancient creatures nearby. Now, you probably know what a Tyrannosaurus sounds like, thanks to the movies. Among thousands of others, you'll recognize this prolonged roar similar to a chainsaw, vacuum cleaner, and horn. And, honestly, its roar has a lot in common with the natural sounds that this monster could make. Thanks to modern technologies and well-preserved remains, scientists managed to simulate the voice of these ancient animals. Imagine you're uploading data about a T-Rex into a program and preparing to hear an intimidating roar. You press play, and it sounds like a bee. Tyrannosaurus rex's scream was similar to birds, not mammals. But it wasn't just a beat. It used nostrils to scream, not a mouth. The hum came from the chest and resembled a siren with low bass. Maybe it sounded a lot more intimidating than what we saw in the movies. It was louder than all the trumpets of the symphony orchestra, and it did it only with the help of its nose. It's not known for sure whether it could growl through the mouth. You could also hear how long-necked dinosaurs sounded in the movies. Their calls were similar to those of elephants, something between a saxophone and a car horn. But in fact, these tall creatures whispered. Almost all mammals make sounds thanks to the laryngeal nerve. This nerve runs down along the neck, then goes around the blood vessels of the chest and comes back to the larynx. In short, the brain gives a signal and it passes twice the distance along the body before the sound is released from the mouth. And now, remember those long necks of dinosaurs? This was the height of a 5-story building. But the voice signal had to run a distance of 10 floors. It took too long to make this long trip, and this affected the dinosaurs' roar. So, when they wanted to make a sound, they just hissed. And it was probably similar to the sound of a giant viper. But the most detailed sounds scientists have managed to get belongs to the Parasaurolophus. You know this herbivorous dinosaur thanks to the long crest on the back of its head. We saw the dinosaur using it in movies and documentaries to fight opponents and enemies. Some scientists believed it also used the comb to drop fruits and leaves from trees. Others thought the dinosaur used it to improve its sense of smell. But it turned out that in addition to self-defense and fighting, they used the comb to make loud and scary sounds in different keys. Scientists replicated this with fantastic accuracy thanks to the structure of its hard tissues. Almost all living beings with a voice use soft organs to make sounds, and these soft tissues decompose quickly. Parasaurolophus had solid ones. They noticed tubes leading from the nostrils to the crest and back to the nostrils when they found the skull. It was like a crumhorn, a curved musical wind instrument. This proved the dinosaur used the crest on the back of its head to make the sounds louder. The comb allowed it to trumpet, so its relatives could hear it in the forest. They made humming sounds with low and high notes. Mix a saxophone and trumpet with a goose hum, car horns, and low frequencies, then increase the volume several times. That's what Parasaurolophus sounded like. That's also what my 4th grade band sounded like. But I digress. You can listen to different shades and timbres of this dinosaur on the internet. It used noises with different tones to create complex social connections. They could communicate, identify each other, trumpet danger, or conversely, signal their friendly intentions. Alright, we've just heard how some ancient reptiles sounded. But what about ancient insects? They didn't have vocal cords, of course. Instead, they used friction between body parts. Look at modern crickets chirping with their wings. One wing has tiny notches. The second has the shape of a mediator. Take a simple plastic comb and run your fingertip over its teeth. Crickets make their sounds by the same principle. Their wings vibrate and release a series of sound waves into the air. But the clicking of an ancient bush cricket was very different from modern insects since they were much noisier. The sounds of these clicks were like a whistle. With the help of high-frequency waves, they could also communicate secretly as if they were doing it through a closed radio channel. If you heard this, you would hardly be able to fall asleep to it. Now, modern crickets are not so loud, as they began to add more high frequencies to their sounds. Higher pitch waves don't spread as far, reducing the risk that a bat will hear the insects. Just imagine how the jungle of that time sounded. The loud chirping of crickets hurts the ears. Then you hear a brachiosaurus hissing. The clicks of pterodactyls shake the sky like thunderclaps. Then you hear the trumpet sounds of different tones somewhere in the jungle. These are Parasaurolophus communicating with each other. And then you get scared by a loud Tyrannosaurus siren. What a racket! You'd probably not find peace in such conditions. Fortunately, humans appeared millions of years later. And, by the way, scientists have managed to find out and understand what our distant ancestors sounded like. They carefully examined the insert function of the mouth, nose, and throat on the Neanderthal skeleton. Their voices were similar to ours, but the phonetic range of an adult Neanderthal was the same as if they were 2 to 3 years old. It was like mumbling without consonant sounds. The study of the skull couldn't recreate precisely the sound of Neanderthals, but in 2007, scientists extracted DNA samples from their bones. They found a variation of the gene that responds to human speech. Scientists believe that Neanderthals fought with Homo sapiens, you know, our family tree. As a result of this conflict, their kind became extinct. But the found gene points they could have had other connections with each other. Perhaps Neanderthals could understand their language and even pronounce some words.
And now for some breaking news. All snakes have suddenly disappeared.
If you saw this on the news, what do you think would happen? Well, Voldemort certainly wouldn't be pleased to hear this, and neither would other Slytherin members. Hogwarts would have 3 houses instead of 4. Parseltongue, which is the language of serpents, would become useless. Okay, Potterheads, let's get back to our Muggle world. How would it affect us? Well, let's look at the bright side first. People with ophidiophobia, which is the fear of snakes, would be so relieved. We can all agree that snakes aren't exactly everyone's favorite animal. Some snakes are venomous, and this doesn't help save their reputation. It's often overlooked that these animals usually prefer to retreat when you encounter them. They can become defensive if threatened, but when left alone, they don't want to mess with you. Try telling this to people with a phobia, though. Now they can enjoy outdoor activities, such as mountain climbing, like everyone else. And yet, they would have other worries in the absence of these serpents. The design of the ecosystem works like a clock. Every species has an important role. If one goes down, the others will be affected. Snakes are no exception to this order. They primarily snack on mice or rats. They help to control rodent and other small mammal populations. This is important in terms of preventing the spread of diseases, too. Think about the spread of the plague of medieval times. Driving out all reptiles could cause a similar problem. Did you know that the bubonic plague was never completely gone? It's been spotted in modern times too. For instance, in Madagascar in 2008. So it's good to have some snakes around to protect us from disease outbreaks. You see, snakes are excellent hunters. They ambush their prey by using their highly developed senses to find and track their potential dinner. They're super mobile, can squeeze through cracks, climb on rock walls, and swim. They can even fly. Well, sort of. Flying snakes can't actually gain altitude, but they can glide. They use the speed of free fall and contortions of their bodies to follow airflows and lift themselves. Yeah, they can catch their prey in numerous ways. If we imagine a world without them, it will lead us to another phobia. Allow me to introduce you to mussophobia. It's the fear of mice and rats. People with this phobia will have a hard time with all those rats wandering around, since there are no snakes to eat them. Not to mention that a single pair of rats can have 1 million descendants in over a year. Say hello to crop damage. An overpopulation of rodents can lead to a shortage of food and competition for resources. Do I feel the Hunger Games vibes? Oh, and mice wouldn't be our only problem. You can add insects to the list too. Again, without snakes, they'll throw a party in the streets. Reptiles also play an important role in the natural environment and food webs as prey. Mongooses, eagles, and hawks would really miss snakes. Eventually, some populations of large mammals would decline, and this could lead to the extinction of some species. Then there's medicine. Scientists and researchers would miss these creatures. Snake venom is the key to the development of certain medicines. For example, some diabetes and heart disease medicines have been derived from snake venom. Patients who need them will get affected too. When we mention snakes and medicine, there's something else that comes to mind. Botox. Is it really snake venom? Nope. Snake venom used in skincare isn't obtained from the animal itself. It turns out that this ingredient is called snake. It's a human-made ingredient designed to mimic the effects of temple viper snake venom. Now let's picture what life would really look like without snakes. I'm starting with day 1. People don't immediately notice the absence of these creatures. So, in the first few days, especially in cities, people would have no clue that all snakes are gone. Workers in zoos could start to panic. You would see some news about snakes missing from zoos. Then people in zoo administrations would go through CCTV footage. They would be shocked to see that snakes disappeared into thin air. After the spread of this news, authorities would probably open special departments to see if they have any snakes left in their country. Then it would turn into a worldwide issue. Some sort of a global alliance would be established to investigate what happened to these reptiles and what could be done about it. By the time authorities and people understood the severity of the situation, ecosystems would already start to change. People who live in urban environments may not be directly affected in the first few months. Then they would see more mice in their houses and in the streets. Around 500,000 mice live in the network of tunnels of the London Underground, for example. The number may vary, but many rodents live in large cities. These animals would become more visible. You'd open a kitchen cabinet and, oops, you'd see a mouse looking at you from behind a jar of peanut butter. New career opportunities would arise, since the demand to live in a mouse-free environment would skyrocket. Authorities might introduce new taxes to raise money to handle this new situation. After all, they would need to provide people with safe places to live. Of course, it would be not only urban places that would be affected by the absence of snakes. The countryside would have even more problems. Without snakes, the number of pests would increase. These animals would start destroying crops and habitats of other animals, and farmers would be in serious trouble. Authorities would need to support people living there and find ways to protect the environment, which would be their top priority. Researchers and scientists would have to take a huge responsibility. Maybe they'd create artificial snakes that could be nutritious like real snakes, so that animals like eagles would hunt them and continue to live. What artificial snakes would look like is a mystery. I can't imagine them. I'll just leave it to you. If we flashed forward to 5 years from the first day of the world without snakes, we would face an entirely different world. Maybe we would have a special day for it, the 5th anniversary of the world without snakes. The changes would be obvious, but by that time, people would have probably got used to living in that different world. Some restaurants would have already made changes to their menus. Goodbye to snake soup. Then there would be new museums dedicated to snakes. You'd be able to read about the story of their evolution and see their fossils. Maybe you'd stop by the museum souvenir shop to buy a snake-shaped pen for your friend. Lastly, we would still be looking for alternatives to snake venom in the field of medicine. I mean, it's a relief for people who show allergic reactions to snake bites, but these animals are crucial for some studies and medicines. So, researchers would still be busy trying to find alternatives that could replace snake venom. If we went 200 years ahead in time, we would see a world where people have fully accepted that snakes are gone for good. So much so that younger people would only know that there was an animal named a snake that once lived on this planet. They would get to know this animal from history books and videos. Coloring books would have a cat or a dog, but not a snake. Mythical creatures like Medusa and Shamaran would become even more mystical and interesting. Oh, and we wouldn't compare a sneaky person to a snake anymore. There would be a new definition for them. We've survived the Ice Age, meteorites, and many other challenges, so we'll probably figure something out. Fingers crossed that this scenario never gets real, though. Do you have any other version of how events could unfold in a snakeless world?
Your heart is racing. You're running for your life from one of the biggest creatures you've ever seen. A giant reptile on 2 legs, sprinting right behind you. You hear the sound of a raging river next to you, but decide not to jump in. Thick leaves and bushes keep blocking your path, and you keep getting stuck in the mud. Everything around you is out to get you, and there's nowhere to hide. You spot a hollowed-out tree trunk and crawl inside. Whatever's out there is getting closer and closer. You hear deep guttural breathing and huge stomping. It's getting closer. You see a large tail from a crack in the tree trunk, swinging and knocking down bushes and small trees. Whatever it is, it's sniffing you out like those dogs at the airport. And right next to your face are giant bugs the size of a house cat. Perfect. You've always been scared to even look at crawly little things, but this one's so close and so big, you can actually see its facial features. It's looking at you like you're the alien. You want to scream, but can't. Then, out of the darkness, more bugs. They're curious things, flicking their antennas all over your body. Okay, this is too much. A bug is one thing, but now, a giant centipede thing is crawling your way. Its fangs are the size of your thumb. You dart out of the tree trunk and come face to face with a giant monster. It stops and stares at you, knowing you have no place to go. Claws and teeth the size of bowling pins. That's enough to keep you up at night. It's getting ready to charge right at you. Welcome to the most dangerous period and area in history for a human, the mid-Cretaceous Sahara. This place was thriving around 100 million years ago in what would now be North Africa. Back then, the continents were all arranged differently, and the weather was wild. Extreme storms were pretty common, and temperatures would rise and fall like a Mexican wave at a soccer stadium. Then, sea levels started to rise. Water flooded the Kem region, an area between modern-day Algeria and Morocco. Over the next millions of years, asteroids, volcanic eruptions, and other natural disasters wiped out everything else. Bye-bye, dinosaurs. Thanks for playing. You probably think of the Sahara as one of the most inhospitable places on Earth, but back when it had trees and rivers, it was even more dangerous. The famous River of Giants was a huge river system that stretched from modern-day Egypt all the way to Morocco. The land was flat and not much vegetation grew there, but it was enough for life to exist. Frightening, scary life. That creature you're staring at, it's a giant, scary-looking theropod, and it's out to get you. Imagine a T-Rex-like dinosaur that's more than 32 feet tall and has an epic jawline. Scary stuff. They were the top dogs in the food chain back then. And that's why this place and period in history was so unique. The entire area had an incredible imbalance between hungry dinos and poor little dino snacks. There wasn't enough food to go around. Scientists were never able to find much evidence of herbivores. That means it might have been a royal rumble of carnivorous creatures waiting to pounce on each other at any moment. So, after a while of having a stare-down contest with a giant theropod, a shadow creeps up on you from behind. You're too scared to turn around, but the growling is louder than anything you've ever heard. It shakes you to the core. You turn around and see a Spinosaurus, and that's about all you can see. You know how they always show the T-Rex as the king of the dinosaurs? Well, this one would be, what, the emperor? It stands about 50 feet tall and has a sail of scales on its back, the size of a regular human. Then add in a crocodile-style snout with razor-sharp teeth and some short, powerful legs. Its diet mainly consists of river fish, but it's looking at you like you're a delicious fish taco. The two alphas are now in a standoff, with you stuck in the middle. But before you close your eyes and get ready to be eaten, they begin fighting each other, knocking down trees. You tiptoe your way out of there and run. The further you go, the better, right? Wrong. Not here, because everywhere you go, there's going to be something dangerous. During this period, there was danger in the sky, in the water, and on land. There were small mammals scurrying around here and there, but they mostly stayed in the shadows to avoid danger. After 5 minutes of running as fast as humanly possible, you make it out of the forest and onto an open plain. Bad move. Now there's nowhere to hide. Suddenly, you hear another shriek. You look behind you. Nothing. It's just short grass everywhere. Then you tilt your head up to the sky and see what looks like a giant bird. Only these are technically flying crocodiles. There were plenty of huge pterosaurs that ruled the skies, Anaconda saharica was a flying reptile that may have eaten fish in the river. Those fish must have been tasty. It had a huge wingspan and long slender jaws. Oh, and it was the size of a small bus. This one found you and is racing down to catch you. You run for your life, again. And this time, there's no place to hide. Suddenly, you feel talons grasping onto you and you're lifted off the ground. You soar up. If you weren't scared out of your mind, you might have noticed how beautiful the giant river channels below you are. The Anaconda maneuvers like a fighter jet, headed for the mountains, dodging all obstacles. You see a large nest with some mini beasts in it. They're hungry and as large as you. Not a great combination. You try to break free, but it's impossible. The creature drops you in the middle of the nest and flies off. You try to cover yourself, but the little ones keep pecking away. It's only a matter of time before it's too late. You look down below you and see the river. You can't tell how deep it is, but it's got a really strong current. You're out of options. You dive into the raging river and get dragged along with the current. Safe for now-ish. Imagine it's 2021. You're walking along one of the hottest and driest places on Earth, the middle of the Sahara Desert, only to find fossils of oversized fish. They ranged from bite size to bus size. Even freshwater sharks lived there. These weren't your average little fishies. Judging by their teeth, those guys meant business. You might even find a giant sea turtle swimming around. Okay, back to your wacky adventure. Luckily, you wash up on a safe sandy part of the river where you're able to relax. You drink some river water and try to find a safe place to make camp. Every noise you hear makes you jump. You sit down and try to enjoy the calmness of ancient Earth. Just when you feel you can finally catch your breath, you see a Spinosaurus walking along the river on the prowl. You run off and hide under a bush. It passes you by. You're safe. Or not. It turns, shakes the bushes, and sees you. Just then, a large boom scares it away. It's the sound of you jolting awake. You turn on the light and see your cat staring at you. Those dinosaurs seem so real, probably because of that documentary you were watching right before bed. The entire mid-Cretaceous ecosystem depended on rivers for daily life. Just like all ancient civilizations, rivers were essential for the creatures of the time. And very recently, scientists discovered a new species of snakes that went extinct back then, with no known descendants. To understand these ancient ecosystems, it's important to know a lot about fossils. You might find two different fossils side by side, but those animals might have lived millions of years apart.
It looks like a prehistoric creature that came from the time of dinosaurs. This scary beast is called the basking shark. It can grow up to 39 feet. People have only reported 3 of them in the past 160 years. The last sighting was in 2015, and before that, about 80 years ago. These sharks sometimes rise to the surface to filter out small animals, such as shrimps and other small crustaceans, when they want to have a nice, tasty seafood dinner. But when there isn't enough grub at the surface, they go down to the depths of almost 3,300 feet, where they tend to stay for months, which is something researchers discovered using satellite tags. Tag, you're it! Now, basking sharks like to spend their time in more temperate waters, but they can migrate long distances. They live across the globe, but in warm tropical or subtropical areas, they won't go near the surface because they're not fans of high temperatures. The lion's mane jellyfish is not that rare, but it's fascinating how large it is. It's the biggest among jellyfish species and the longest animal. Its total length can reach 120 feet. That's approximately 23 feet more than the longest blue whale scientists know about. The jellyfish has around 70 to 150 tentacles, and they all contain huge amounts of neurotoxins that can seriously harm you if you come in contact with the animal. But people don't usually come across this type of jellyfish because it rarely lives near the coast, preferring the open ocean. Generally, you can find the lion's mane jellyfish no deeper than 65 feet below the surface, where it dines on small fishes, zooplankton, and some other types of jellyfish. It uses its tentacles to catch its value meal. Hey, you want fries with that? The giant phantom jelly comes out of the darkness and depths of the ocean's midnight zone. Its sun hat-shaped bell reaches over 3 feet across. This bell trails 4 ribbon-like mouth arms that can be up to 33 feet long. This quite rare creature uses its mouth arms to catch unfortunate animals swimming around and not knowing what's coming for them. Giant phantom jelly propels itself through the water with periodic pulses coming from its orange head. It glows faintly and mysteriously in the pitch-black depths. It lives across the globe in all the oceans except for the Arctic. I'm guessing it's too cold. Because of its odd shape, people often call the oarfish the dragonfish or sea serpent. It's about 26 feet long, which makes it the longest bony fish we know about, and lives at depths of 3,300 feet. Oarfish spend most of their time in the deep, dark parts of the open ocean in tropical and subtropical areas. They almost never come to the surface, unless, invited. It's a ribbon-shaped and shiny silver creature with a long red dorsal fin and red oar-like pelvic fins. Its body has no scales and is very thin. The fish can grow to a length of about 30 feet and weigh 660 pounds. Oarfish have really big eyes that help them see better in their dark, scary surroundings. The frilled shark is definitely one of the gnarliest-looking marine animals out there. If you saw it somewhere, you'd probably think you went back to the age of dinosaurs. Yup, the frilled shark is a prehistoric creature because its roots go back 80 million years. This living fossil can grow to be 7 feet long. It got its name from its frilly gills. Even though frilled sharks have the shark part in their name, they swim similar to an eel in a distinctly serpentine way. Its mouth is terrifying. Similar to the maw of the great white shark, it has 300 trident-shaped teeth lined in 25 rows. Hey, come a little closer, huh? Researchers discovered this creature in the 19th century, but people rarely see it, and no wonder. It usually lives at depths of between 390 and 4,200 feet. Most of the time, the frilled shark feeds on squid, swallowing them whole. Its long jaws allowed the frilled shark to gape extra wide and swallow animals half as long as its entire body. Goblin sharks are very rare. Researchers have spotted fewer than 50 of them in more than 120 years. But maybe that's for the best, since we're talking about a pretty scary fella with a narrow snout and sharp teeth. It's also capable of thrusting its entire jaw outward when it wants to catch something. Sounds familiar. As it's lurking through the dark depths of the ocean, a goblin shark sees a small squid that looks quite yummy. The dangerous animal inches toward the squid. When the poor creature notices the predator, it tries to dart away, but it's too late. The shark has already thrust its jaw the whole 3 inches out of its mouth. This jaw is connected to the flaps of skin the shark can unfold. This helps a lot because the goblin shark is a sluggish animal, so it's pretty hard for it to chase its food. After finishing its lunch, the goblin shark puts its jaw back in its mouth and swims away as if nothing's happened. Goblin sharks mostly live at the bottom of the ocean. Like many other shark species, they prefer swimming alone. Here's a silver-colored creature with very rough skin. That's the ocean sunfish, with a total length of almost 11 feet. Its other name is mola. The ocean sunfish is the heaviest of all bony fish out there. People sometimes call it a swimming head because of its bizarre appearance. These creatures have such a weird shape because they're born with a back fin that never actually grows. It just folds into itself as the animal matures and creates a rounded rudder. The sunfish is a bit clumsy. It moves with the help of its mighty fins that allow the animal to swim on its side. This marine inhabitant is a solitary creature. It mostly feeds on zooplankton and jellyfish. The spotted wobbegong is one of the world's rarest sharks. It grows to be more than 10 feet long. It may not look as terrifying as some of its shark relatives, but it's pretty good at catching unsuspecting animals swimming past, mostly during the night. The animal has a spiracle, which is why it can breathe while staying still at the bottom of the ocean. It's motionless most of the time, which is why you can barely notice it. Its flat body and large pelvic and pectoral fins blend in with the underwater terrain. That's why they're so good at hiding. This ability helps when these sharks want to protect themselves too. Wobbegong means carpet shark. They usually live close to the ocean floor in coral reefs, on sandy bottoms, and under piers. People have even spotted the shark in the water that is barely deep enough to cover its flattened body. Now, blobfish lack teeth and bones, so they can't actively hunt. Since they don't have much muscle mass, they can barely move around. Hey, I had a roommate like that once. They get their energy from animals they scoop up from the seafloor. They also know how to conserve this energy. That's how it usually goes with deep-sea creatures. They don't have as much food as those animals that swim closer to the surface. Instead, they have special body mechanisms that allow them to save energy for the times when they don't have much to eat. Pressure at the depths where the blobfish lives is 120 times as high as that at the surface. That's why the bizarre creature looks like a weird gelatinous mass only when you bring it up to the surface. The pressure here is not strong enough to keep its body together. Hey, breaking up is hard to do. The white-margined stargazer could compete with the blobfish for the title of the ugliest animal in the sea, don't you think? Now, this animal has eyes on the top of its head, together with an upward-facing mouth which the creature uses to hide itself in the sand. That's where it spends most of its time, with only its eyes protruding from the sand. It chills this way until some small animal passes by. It can lunge at its target incredibly quickly, literally within milliseconds. This creates a vacuum in the water that pulls in a crab, fish, or some other small, unfortunate animal. Another tactic involves venom. This fish has a venomous spine in its shoulder blade that helps with catching other animals and defending itself against enemies. Even though it's not related to the electric eel, the white-margined stargazer can generate an electric shock as powerful as 50 volts. Ow!
Today, I'm going to tell you about creatures that had unique features which allowed them to grow to incredible sizes. They were some of the most impressive animals to have ever existed on our planet. The Argentinosaurus is a genus of sauropod dinosaurs that lived approximately 97 million years ago in what is now South America. Scientists think it was one of the largest land animals ever, with a length of up to 100 feet and a weight of up to 100 tons. A farmer stumbled upon a giant leg bone while tending his cattle. That's how he discovered the first fossils of the Argentinosaurus in Argentina in 1987. Further excavations uncovered more bones, revealing a massive dinosaur that would have dwarfed most other animals of its time. The Spinosaurus, meaning spine lizard, is a genus of theropod dinosaur that lived around 97 million years ago in what is now North Africa. It is believed to be one of the largest carnivorous dinosaurs to ever exist, with a length of up to 60 feet and a weight of up to 23 tons. The Spinosaurus is known for its distinctive elongated sail-like structure on its back. It was likely used for thermoregulation. It also had long crocodile-like jaws that were lined with sharp teeth. This allowed the creature to catch and eat large prey, such as fish, crocodiles, and other dinosaurs. The first fossils of the Spinosaurus were discovered in Egypt in 1912. The sperm whale, Physeter macrocephalus, is a species of toothed whale that is the largest toothed predator on Earth. It also has the largest brain of any animal species. It is found in oceans all over the world and can dive to depths of up to 7,000 feet in search of food. You can easily recognize sperm whales by their massive, block-shaped heads, which can measure up to 1/3 of their total body length. They have dark brown or grayish-blue skin and a distinctive wrinkled appearance. The Titanoboa is an extinct genus of a giant snake that lived approximately 58 million years ago. It is considered to be the largest known snake ever. It could grow up to 42 feet and weighed around 2,500 pounds. The first fossils of the Titanoboa were discovered in a coal mine in Colombia in 2004. This discovery meant a lot because it provided insights into the size and behavior of snakes during the Paleocene era, as well as the overall climate and ecosystem of the time. The blue whale, Balænoptera musculus, is the largest animal on Earth, measuring up to 100 feet in length and weighing as much as 200 tons. These marine mammals are found in oceans all over the world and can live up to 90 years. Blue whales have a long, streamlined body that is usually blue-gray in color with mottled patterns. They have a small dorsal fin and 2 pectoral fins that are about 1/3 the length of their body. Blue whales feed on tiny shrimp-like creatures called krill, and they eat a lot. A single adult blue whale can eat up to 8,000 pounds of krill in a day. The Leadsichthus is an extinct genus of large, bony fish that lived during the Jurassic period, approximately 155 million years ago. It is believed to be one of the largest fish that have ever lived. Some estimates suggest that it could grow up to 55 feet in length. The first fossils of Leadsichthus were discovered in England in the 19th century, and more recent discoveries have been made in other parts of Europe, South America, and Africa. Despite its enormous size, the Leadsichthus was a filter feeder, similar to modern-day whale sharks, and likely fed on plankton and other small organisms. The creature did it by simply swimming with its enormous mouth open, filtering water through its gills. The pterodostro is an extinct species of flamingo-like birds that lived approximately 35 million years ago. They were relatively small birds with a wingspan of about 2-3 feet. And they were known for their distinctive long, narrow beaks equipped with comb-like structures used for filter feeding. The pterodostro lived in shallow bodies of water, like lakes and lagoons, and mostly fed on small crustaceans and other tiny organisms. The animal filtered them from the water using the comb-like structures on the inside of its beak while swimming through the water. The African elephant is the largest land animal on Earth and one of the most recognizable ones. There are 2 species of the African elephant, the savanna elephant, Loxodonta africana, and the forest elephant, Loxodonta cyclotis. You can see them in various parts of sub-Saharan Africa. These creatures can be identified by their large size, gray skin, and long trunks. African elephants can grow up to 13 feet tall and weigh up to 14,000 pounds, depending on the species and gender.
Think you know what lurks in the depths of the ocean? While nearly 95% of our oceans haven't been explored yet, it's hard not to let your imagination run wild. But thanks to brave explorers, deep-sea cameras, and awesome archaeologists, we do know about some pretty incredible sea creatures living in our waters today, and millions of years ago. From the 9-foot spider crab to the 60-foot prehistoric megalodon, these sea dwellers come in all shapes and sizes. But let's focus on sea creatures famous for their huge size. Can you guess which living species of whale is the largest? Well, it's not the orca, but that's a good guess. The orca is a toothed whale that can grow to anywhere from 23 feet to 32 feet, which is slightly smaller than a school bus. How about the narwhal? Nope, they're not the biggest either. These unicorns of the sea live mainly in Arctic waters and only grow 13 feet to 20 feet in length, and that's including their 9-foot tusk. Tired of guessing? Okay, I give in. The largest whale that still exists today is the blue whale. At a jaw-dropping 82 feet to 105 feet, the blue whale is not only the biggest whale we know of, but is currently the largest animal to have ever lived on Earth. Seriously. These animals are bigger than a T-Rex, and even the prehistoric megalodon. If you were to put a blue whale next to a school bus, it would look like it could swallow it. Think about that. According to National Geographic, a blue whale's tongue can weigh the same as an elephant. And their hearts can weigh as much as a car. That doesn't even sound possible. It's no wonder these giants need to eat about 4 tons of krill every day. While there aren't too many animals living today that can compete with the blue whale's epic proportions, there is an entirely different species that is a good contender, and it's not quite what you would expect. It's a jellyfish. No, I'm not talking about the little jellyfish that wash up on the shore and ruin a perfectly good day at the beach. I'm referring to the lion's mane jellyfish, the biggest jellyfish around. This invertebrate can grow up to 120 feet long. They also come in different gorgeous colors like red, purple, or even shades of orange. As if their length wasn't impressive, the lion's mane jellyfish boast a whopping 8 sets of 70 to 150 tentacles. That means they can have up to 1,200 in total. And here's the giant oceanic manta ray, the largest type of ray in the world.
Their wingspan can be longer than a bus. These guys can reach 30 feet in length. They also have the biggest brain compared to body size among all fish. Unlike their stingray cousins, mantas don't have venomous tails. And while the lion's mane jellyfish and the blue whale are yet to be beaten for the longest sea creature, there is one marine creature that can grow even larger in length. The Portuguese Physalia physalis, tentacles and all, can reach a length of 165 feet long, and that's according to mentalfloss.com. While this thing may look a lot like a jellyfish, it's actually known as a siphonophore, and there are hundreds and sometimes thousands of them that are genetically identical. Their long tentacles help the organism catch prey, and its sting is fatal to most animals, even humans in some cases. What's even creepier is that if one of the tentacles comes off the organism for whatever reason, it can float around the water for days before decomposing. Even if it's detached, this tentacle can still sting you. But don't go running out of the ocean just yet. Your chances of being hurt by a Portuguese Physalia physalis sting are pretty slim. However, if you do get stung, the side effects aren't pretty, with welts, stomach cramps, an elevated heart rate, and an upset stomach. While you don't want to go anywhere near these long creatures, they sure are pretty to look at. Check out all those colors. The Shastosaurus is the biggest marine reptile that has ever existed. These predators lived during the late Triassic period, about 210 million years ago. These amazing giants could reach lengths of up to 69 feet and weighed more than 75 tons. This made the Shastosaurus as heavy as a blue whale. And if you could stand this creature up vertically, it'd be as tall as a 7-story building. Despite appearances, the Shastosaurus was actually pretty slim for its size. Its ribcage was only 6 feet across. You'd think that this big guy was chowing down on other dinosaurs, but that's not the case at all. This reptile survived on a diet that consisted of small fish and cephalopods, like octopuses and squids. The Albertonectes is a bright representative of the plesiosaur family, meaning that this marine reptile had a small head on an incredibly long neck and large flipper-like limbs that helped it move through the water. These creatures occupied the seas around North America 76 to 70 million years ago. The length of this sea monster could reach 38 feet, with its neck taking up 23 feet of that length. Its neck was a true record breaker. It had a whopping 76 bones in it. No other animal known to humankind has had so many vertebrae in its neck. Scientists aren't sure why they needed such a lengthy neck. They might have used it to collect shellfish off the seabed, or perhaps it helped them capture their main prey, fish and squids. This aquatic reptile also had gastroliths in its stomachs. Some of them were as big as 5.5 inches in diameter. The Tylosaurus belonged to the Mosasaur family. It dominated the shallow seas of North America about 85 to 80 million years ago. This was an enormous predator, with the biggest representatives reaching 45 feet in length. It had a narrow hydrodynamic body with a blunt, powerful head that the animal used to ram and stun its prey. Its body was equipped with agile flippers and a long tail decorated with a maneuverable fin. The Tylosaurus was a carnivore, and its diet included not only fish, turtles, and small sharks, but also other mosasaurs, plesiosaurs, and flightless birds. Meet Ophthalmosaurus. This prehistoric reptile thrived during the late Jurassic period and lived in oceans all over the world. Ophthalmosaurus weighed somewhere around 6,000 pounds and grew to approximately 16 feet long, according to newdinosaurs.com. That's about the same length as the beluga whale that exists today. It's too bad these guys went extinct before we had a chance to see them ourselves, as their cartoonish wide eyes and dolphin-like features are pretty darn cute. Of course, the Ophthalmosaurus evolved over time to become ophthalmologists, or eye doctors that we know today. No, that's just a lie. Just testing you. The Mosasaurus is a truly gigantic predator that dominated the seas all over the world about 66 million years ago. According to fossil evidence, some specimens could be more than 50 feet in length. This fact makes the Mosasaurus the biggest marine carnivore of its time. One of the most terrifying things about this creature was its crocodile-like head, decorated with literally hundreds of razor-sharp teeth, neatly organized in 2 rows on both jaws. The thing is that it was pretty challenging for the Mosasaurus to grab its prey in the water. That's why it had all these teeth, plus something special: pterygoid teeth anchored to the bones on the roof of its mouth. This made hunting and holding onto its prey much easier. The Styxosaurus belonged to the Plesiosaur family and lived during the late Cretaceous period, around 85 to 70 million years ago. Upon first glance at this dinosaur, you might mistake it for a sea snake, and it'd be an honest mistake. Styxosauruses were about 35 feet in length, but over 16 feet of that consisted just of their long snake-like neck. They had a comparatively small body and weighed approximately 4 tons. Their mouths were full of razor-sharp cone-shaped teeth that they used to catch fish. They didn't need to chew their prey, thanks to the 200 small stones called gastroliths in their bellies that probably aided in digestion. At the same time, some scientists believe that the Styxosaurus used these stones to sink to the ocean bottom in search of particular types of fish. Looks kind of like Nessie to me.
Australia used to have its own giants. Those were huge animals that could have dwarfed anything living on this continent these days. Scientists found the remains of many of those ancient creatures in the Anaconda caves in South Australia, 4 hours away from Adelaide. It's a lovely region, but it can be treacherous. Watch out for holes the ground is pocked with. Known as pitfall traps, many of them are no wider than a coffee table. They're deep and plunge into the darkest of caverns. One of such caverns is called Victoria Fossil Cave, and it's a treasury that's been hiding the bones of around 45,000 animals for centuries. Some of the oldest bones belong to creatures far more terrifying than any animal you can encounter today. Those were the ancient Australian megafauna, huge beasts that roamed the continent during the Pleistocene epoch. During those, there were giant snakes, huge flightless birds, wombat-like creatures the size of a rhinoceros, and many others. One of the largest examples of the Australian megafauna scientists have discovered so far is the Diprotodon. That giant herbivorous creature was 10 feet long and 6.5 feet tall, and weighed more than 6,000 pounds, about as much as a small Asian elephant. Even though this terrifying beast didn't eat meat, it could have smashed other animals with its sheer weight. Scientists have found the remains of hundreds of such creatures all over Australia, so it's safe to say that no other animal from that time or in that location was larger than this giant. Despite its creepy appearance, the Diprotodon was a relative to the modern-day wombat, and those are known to sometimes pounce humans. The Diprotodon had toes that pointed inward and were well suited for digging burrows. On the other hand, Diprotodon was a giant, and it was unlikely that it used to do so. It was likely a trait it had inherited from its smaller burrowing ancestors, or it could have used its claws to search for roots. This theory is supported by the fact that the animal's pouch was facing backward. It prevented any dirt from collecting inside while the creature was digging. Since this animal was so big, it didn't have to worry much about predators. Up until 60,000 years ago, when the first humans appeared on the continent, full-grown Diprotodons only had to look out for creatures like the Quincana. Measuring in at a whopping 20 feet long, the Quincana was a land crocodile. It lived in Australia from around 20 million to 40,000 years ago. It disappeared along with most other mega creatures of the last ice age. It's thought to be the result of the first humans coming to the continent. Even though the Quincana was extremely fast and dangerous, it was possible that this creature got out-competed by human hunters who took all available prey. Unlike modern crocodiles that are mainly aquatic, that mighty beast was a land dweller. Scientists figured it out by studying the Quincana's legs. They were able to support and carry the body clear off the ground. It means there was no escape for ancient people once the Quincana spotted them. Modern crocodiles can only push themselves along on their bellies. Such an adaptation allowed the Quincana to chase its prey for long periods of time, exhausting it in the process. Another creepy feature of this ancient monster was its teeth. Aquatic crocs have conical teeth, Those are great for gripping and holding on to prey underwater. But Quincana had knife-like teeth, ideal for slicing soft-bodied animals like, mammals. Another Australian monster, Thylacoleo, wasn't all that large, but it didn't make it any less terrifying. It was still among the top predators and the biggest carnivorous animals in Australia. This creature was a true oddity of nature, even by prehistoric standards. First, its teeth resembled not those of a regular predator, but those of a rodent. Its front incisors were enlarged, taking the place of canines. Premolars were also shaped like blades. They were used for cutting flesh and bone. At first, scientists thought that Thylacoleo used those teeth to eat nuts and fruits. But later, a study showed that the use of such teeth was better suited on necks and spines. The jaws of this ancient creature were immensely powerful. A 220-pound Thylacoleo had a bite force similar to that of a present-day 550-pound lion. It means that the animal could easily bring down prey much larger than itself. Then there was Thylacoleo's tail. It had strong muscles which provided the animal with the ability to use the tail as support when tackling large prey. The Thylacoleo had retractable claws, and this feature is very uncommon among marsupials. It allowed the animal to keep its razor-sharp hooks from getting blunt and could help it get a better grip on its prey. Scientists are quite sure that, like today's leopards, the Thylacoleo could climb trees and jump on other animals from above. It was done so fast and stealthily, they never knew what hit them. The creature's rear feet support this theory. The first toe there was reduced, but the foot had a rough pad like what modern-day possums have. It allowed them to have a better grip while climbing. Right after scientists found the first skull of the Meliolania, this animal was classified as a lizard. That's why its name translates to small groomer. But after they discovered more complete fossils, it turned out that the Meliolania was a giant turtle. But that's not all. It was one of the largest land turtles to ever have existed. The main reason researchers initially believed the creature to be a lizard was the fact that its skull was adorned with a series of spikes. It's something the modern-day horned lizard can boast. But even after discovering the true nature of the Meliolania, scientists still don't know how to properly catalog it. It might have been a creature that folded its neck under its spine, or it could have folded it to the side. Beside those defensive mechanisms on its head, the Meliolania was also equipped with a spiked tail, which was probably used to prevent predators from attacking the animal from behind. Most species of the Meliolania disappeared around 2,000 to 3,000 years ago because of humans who hunted them to extinction in both Australia and on the surrounding islands. It took around 2 centuries for these turtles to go extinct in that region of the globe. The Megalania was a giant Australian lizard that existed at the end of the Pleistocene epoch. It looked like a Komodo dragon and the Australian monitor lizard, which are both believed to be Megalania's closest living relatives. Fossils tell us that the ancient animal was anywhere from 15 to 26 feet in length. Ow! The youngest fossil remains of this ancient Australian monitor lizard date back to about 50,000 years ago. The first indigenous settlers must have encountered Megalania, which led to the lizard's extinction. Originally, scientists thought that the Megalania was the only member of the genus Megalania, but these days it belongs to the genus Varanus, which means that the prehistoric creature is closely related to other Australian monitor lizards. Our next giant creature on their list was once dubbed an ostrich on steroids. I mean, look at it. It was the last of the thunderbirds to go extinct in Australia. The Genyornis lived on the continent at the same time as early humans. They might have coexisted for 15,000 years or so before the huge bird eventually disappeared. This theory has some proof. The bird's fossils found along with human artifacts. Some cave paintings also depict flightless birds similar to the Genyornis in size and shape. Although it wasn't the largest bird in Australia, the goose-like creature was still as tall as a grown-up man and weighed around 550 pounds. Even a modern-day ostrich can be dangerous if it feels threatened. Imagine meeting its giant prehistoric relative. Scientists are still arguing about its diet. Many believe the creature was an herbivore, but there's still a chance that the Genyornis was a partial scavenger. Its small, stubby wings and powerful hoof-like legs hint that the bird could have been a plant eater. But its huge beak and exceptionally deep lower jaw evoke suspicion. Such features are highly unusual in birds.